One of the most common characteristics of a toxic boss is their communication style. So what are these phrases that toxic bosses use and how are you supposed to respond? The first phrase, "That's how we've always done it." This phrase is the classic method of shutting down new ideas and saying that we are not open for new approaches. In any instance, this phrase specifically is a lack of innovation and a lack of creativity within your team. And oftentimes, bosses that have this approach tend to, over the long period of time, have decreased performance on their teams. And in an organizational setting, oftentimes that means a declining business. So how do you respond? The easiest way to break through this phrase is to be as direct as possible. You want to make sure that you state that you understand that this is how we've done things in the past, and perhaps it has been successful, but there's some sort of reason to change. And you want to make sure that when you state whatever that reason is, it could be that competitors are doing something different. It could be that the industry has changed. It could be that there's new technologies that are uprooting the way that we need to behave. If you can position your statement in terms of urgency, and then after you make the statement, be okay to walk away from it and say, we're going to circle back on this in a week or 2 weeks or whatever the time frame is. You want to make sure that you're being as direct as possible when you hear this statement. The second phrase, "I don't have time for this." This phrase is used to discourage and dismiss. Now, keeping in mind that sometimes supervisors, even on their best days, will dismiss things if they don't have the time or the mental capacity to take on a new project. So how you want to respond if you get this message, first you want to acknowledge that their time is super valuable and as invaluable as yours. So that might be something like, "I completely understand, we're all really busy, we all have things that we need to work on." That's step one. The second thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you get a time on the calendar to have that conversation. So it might be something like your boss might say, "I don't have time for that." You would respond, "I completely understand, all of us are really busy, we have a lot of things going on. When would be a better time to follow up? I want to make sure that we have this conversation before X date." And if you can be persistent and make sure that your supervisor knows that you are serious about this idea and that you will not be dismissed in a very polite way, usually that breaks through that sort of ice. Doesn't prevent them from still being toxic, but it allows you to get your ideas heard, and they might not go anywhere, but then again, you can be persistent and move forward. The third phrase, "It's not my problem." Give me a like if you've heard this phrase for yourself. This statement is unsupportive and usually passes the blame onto someone else. If this is something that you've heard from your supervisor maybe once or twice or 3 times in a short period of settings when it relates to something that's very critical to your role or your organization's purpose, you're going to want to make sure that you're persistent. In this setting, you want to be inquisitive. Ask follow-up questions. Make sure that you can get to the bottom of why your supervisor thinks it's not their problem. You might want to say, "I understand that this isn't your problem. It does affect our team in X, Y, and Z ways. How would you approach step A, step B, step C," and have your supervisor fill in the blanks without them knowing. You want to make sure you're inquisitive and asking more general questions to pull out that information from them. If they're still being dismissive, you want to make sure that you can schedule a meeting with them, and then maybe you have their supervisor attend as well. But you want to make sure that you get them sitting down and answering your questions, because as the team leader, that is their responsibility. The fourth phrase that toxic bosses say, "I'm the boss, do what I say." This statement is authoritative and uncooperative. And if you are a parent and you say this to your child, most of the time you use this when you don't have any patience left. Now, while being a parent is one thing, if you are getting paid to manage a team and you're saying this, it's a big red flag. Now, the biggest way to respond here is be respectful. And I know it seems really frustrating because I'm the same way. If somebody says something that I disagree with, I want to argue with them. You want to approach it with reverse psychology. So you want to say, "I understand this is the role, this is what you've said that we need to do," and then don't touch it for however long you can avoid it. Come back to it a couple days later and frame it in a different way and try to make it seem like it's a new idea that you're bringing up, and try to make it something that your supervisor is going to be on board with. But if you can reframe it, you want to make sure that you're being respectful on the face of it, and then come back around the other side and reframe it as a different idea until your supervisor thinks, "Oh, this was my idea, we're going to do this." The fifth phrase that you might hear is, "This is what's best for the company." This is a telltale sign that your boss doesn't value input from team members. Instead of arguing, you want to make sure that you come to this conversation with data. What is the data that they're referencing? Is it engagement scores? Is it revenue numbers? Is it customer satisfaction? Is it whatever numbers that they're looking at? And then use that data or whatever data pool that you can use to leverage the new ideas that you're bringing in. So it might be something where they say, this is what's best for the company because I saw this number, or because this is what our customers are telling us. You can reproach it and say, I've also have another set of data that we want to add to this consideration. Or if your supervisor is not using data as the fundamental basis for their statement, that's when you can introduce a data set or some sort of statistics or some sort of anecdotes that you can say, this is where I'm coming from and this is my proof that what I'm doing is correct. And the last phrase, the phrase that I myself have heard quite a few times, I don't pay you to disagree. This phrase indicates intolerance and unapproachability. The response from you here should be a little bit more influential. Instead of confronting your boss head on, you want to make sure that you can talk to your colleagues, talk to whoever the stakeholders are that are involved. Maybe it's your supervisor's boss, maybe it's other coworkers, maybe other people who are contributing to the project. Get them on board with your idea. And then when you have a situation where you can meet with your boss and have a conversation, you want to make sure that you can bring in all of those voices and say, I have support from these people. They agree with me here, here, and here, and come in with the weight of an organization. The important thing with all of these phrases is to remain level-headed and make sure that you are not feeling discouraged while all of this can feel discouraging. You want to make sure that you are in the driver's seat and you're being the one who's responsible and attentive to make sure that your role is being protected and making sure that you're able to get done the things that you need to get done. And if you're struggling to figure out how to communicate directly, check out this video about how to be blunt in your communications. I'll see you on the next one.